Hello and welcome to another episode of Raw Chatter. So, we are talking today about control. Now, control specifically when you've got a lot going on. So, we are heading into Q2. Well, by the time you're listening to this, we're already in Q2. And the question always becomes, well, so how was Q1? Did you achieve what you said you were going to achieve? How did you get on in terms of reaching your goals, your targets, the intentions that you set? And there's a lot of pressure to look at results and to look at outcomes, which we need to do if we are able to then revise our intentions, our goals for the next quarter. It makes sense that we do that. But what it can also mean is that we decide that we need to be even more in control, especially if you didn't get the outcomes that you were hoping for, or you just weren't able to accomplish what you thought you would be able to in a specific time frame. Now, I know for a lot of high achievers, and actually for humans in general, this is for everybody, all of us tend to overestimate what we can get done in a day. And we tend to underestimate how long things do actually take. And so when you put those two things together, you can see why, if you do have a kind of running to-do list, it feels like it's never ending and you just seem to be adding to it, because we just kind of get it wrong in terms of just how much we can get done in any one day. And when we feel under pressure, what we tend to do, rather than taking the pressure off, especially if we are somebody with high expectations and we are definitely a high achiever, and if you are running a business, if you're a founder, if you're a CEO, if you're a business owner, or if you're a professional very high up in your field, not necessarily running your own business, but you are at the top of your game, we tend to try and take more control when we feel that we have more stuff going on. And we do this because the brain doesn't want to feel a sense of overwhelm. A sense of overwhelm can lead to feelings of anxiety, and then it can lead to us going down the road of procrastinating, not knowing what to do first, where to start, which can then eventually lead to complete paralysis, where we just don't get anything done whatsoever. And so what we tend to do is decide that we're going to be even stricter and more clear and more specific on the rules and the regulations and the timelines and the deadlines that we set ourselves. And this is our way of trying to prove to ourselves that when we internally are feeling like we're drowning, that on the surface, we are swimming the perfect breaststroke, because we're doing all of the things and we seem to be regimented and rigid and we know exactly what's going on. But oftentimes it's just a cover up. It's just a mask for what actually is really going on. And the more pressure we put on ourselves to do things right and in a certain way, it actually doesn't have the effect that we're hoping for. What we're hoping for is that we are indeed going to feel more in control and therefore more relaxed and calmer, that things are going to be fine and that things are going to work out. But that's not what happens, because we're overwhelming our whole body, our whole nervous system, our biology, our physiology, and our psyche is getting completely overwhelmed. And that often then leads to us literally not being able to function. Or worse, and what's worse than not being able to function? What feels worse as a high achiever is not only do you feel that you can't function, but you can't seem to be able to push yourself to do stuff like you used to be able to either. You literally do go into a state of almost freezing, of just not being able to do anything. And that can equate to having to take a whole day off. And then what happens is we pile on the guilt or the shame, because words like shouldn't, must, ought to, need to, have to start creeping in, and we're actually increasing the pressure, which means that even if we are taking a day off and telling ourselves that we need to just rewind and recharge and let ourselves relax, our head is consistently having a go at us. And so what do we decide to do? Well, we decide we'll take even more control of stuff. And so today is really about helping you and me, because I've been so guilty of this, to recognize that the more we try to control stuff, especially if it's not the stuff that's in our control, the more pressure and the more out of control eventually we're going to feel. Why? Because when we try to control things that we cannot control, we recognize that they usually go wrong. They usually have a different outcome to the one that we wanted, the one that we planned in our head, because it forces us to recognize that there are certain things that we just cannot control. Now, if we go deeper into controlling the things that we think we can control, like our exercise, like our eating habits, when we eat, what we eat, who we eat with, where we're eating. If we decide that we're going to control how much time we allow ourselves to go out socially or to spend relaxing watching TV with a partner, if we are really super, super strict on how many hours sleep we get and ensuring that we have to go to bed at a certain time and we have to get up a certain time, even if your body is saying to you, hey, I need some more sleep, or hey, I'm fighting off a bug and do you know what? I can't do what you want me to do. The more we try to pressurize ourselves and punish ourselves into performance, the more we're going to feel that we are losing control, because you will get to the point where you just will not be able to function. Now, this is really, really powerful in people who have neurodivergent brains. In somebody with ADHD, it's very, very common that I hear from my clients who I work with who are beginning to understand just what is ADHD. And a number of them also have autism as well. And in some, the autism is kind of like, shall we say, if we're going on a percentage, the autism is kind of more 60% autistic to 40% ADHD. And in other people, it's the other way around. Now, it might be 70-30. There's nobody that I work with who's 50-50, that's for sure. It tends to be that one is more predominant than the other in terms of how their brain works. But crucially, this is about nervous system. Whether you have got any neurodivergent issues or not, we all are affected by the thoughts that we think, because they will absolutely affect the way that our nervous system responds or reacts. Because our thoughts have meaning, and our thoughts do not necessarily have the same meaning to other people as they do to us. Everything is about perception and everything is about interpretation, which is why I am so hot on language. The words that we use are probably the most important thing that will determine how we feel and how we function. And those words, we think, don't we? We think in words, all of us. Call it inner chatter, call it thinking, whatever word you use, we all have chatter going on in our heads. And for those of you who have what feels like multiple voices chattering at you, we all do, right? You're not mad, you're not schizophrenic, you're not unique. All of us have different voices that we hear, that some of them are frightened and almost like childish. Some of them can be rebellious, like a teenager. Some of them can be very encouraging and very helpful, very nurturing. Some of them can feel almost bullying and be hypercritical. And there is a myriad of other voices in between, but all of us have these. Now, when we put more pressure on ourselves to do certain things in a certain way, by a certain time, and be really rigid and not put a foot wrong, those voices, or certain ones of those voices, will get extremely loud, right? often the one that feels like it's hypercritical, and often the one that is rebellious, because we're telling ourselves we need to do this stuff. So part of us doesn't want to, because what we actually want and need is something else, but we're not actually listening to what internally is going on. And the more we try to pressurize ourselves and punish ourselves with extra strict control, the more we are going to find that we end up in a state of procrastination and maybe eventually paralysis, where we just cannot function. And so what I really want to get across is that if you find that you are thinking to yourself, right, I just need to take more control, I just need to be more in charge of what I am doing, I'm going to invite you to look at a bigger picture. I'm going to invite you to look at what is actually going on in all areas of your life. What is going on in your personal life in terms of family, in terms of friends, and in terms of relationships, whether that is with family members, whether it is with your kids, whether it is with a partner, whether it is, get specific. What actually really is going on? What is taking up space in your brain? Because a busy brain is going to be focusing on a lot of things, but a busy brain will also lead to slower decision making, more uncertainty, not less. It will also lead to less confidence in your ability to do what it is that you say you're going to do. So get really honest about what is going on in, first of all, that relationship area. Then what is going on in terms of your finances. Then what is going on in terms of your business or your work. And then what is going on in terms of your health. And then what is going on in terms of yourself. How are you talking to yourself, about yourself? How are you feeling in yourself? What is going on? Now, when you look at all those areas and you ask yourself, okay, so what is it that I'm trying to do? Am I trying to feel in control of my relationships by controlling, for example, the food that I'm eating? Am I trying to be in control of my finances by deciding that I can't go out and enjoy myself and spend any money on socializing? Look at what is it that you are actually doing, and then how is that making you feel? Now, it's not going to be the same for everybody. It can't be. But awareness is the first step to helping you to start to really connect to how you think and therefore how you feel, which will determine how you behave. The actions that you take are very much dependent on the thoughts that you think and the feelings that you have because of those thoughts. When we take a behavior pattern, that will then lead to different feelings, which will then lead to more thoughts. And so the cycle goes on. But if we're consistently and continuously feeling under pressure and we've got a lot going on, we've got Easter coming up. You may have kids who are at school and they've broken up and they're on holiday. You may have kids who are a bit older and at uni and they're coming home and you've been used to having the space to yourself. Do you decide that you're going to work in the same way that you've always worked through the holidays? Or have you decided that you're going to spend more time with family because there are more family members around? Have you even had a discussion? Do you know what your plan is? Because if you can see where the things are that are on your mind, usually subconsciously, but you kind of know that they're there. Maybe you're pushing them away. Maybe they're popping in when you're supposed to be relaxing and trying to sleep. Your head's coming up with, oh, it's Good Friday. On this Friday, what am I going to be doing? Oh, it's Easter Monday. It's a bank holiday. Yeah, but I've got some work that I want to get done and I've got a deadline. Do I go into the office? Because it is a bank holiday, the office is going to be quiet. All of these things may be going through your head. And the more you are chattering inside your head, the more every part of you is staying switched on. And the more you are switched on with chatter, with noise, with busyness, the less you are connected, usually, to what your body is actually trying to tell you. And this is where, when we try and be more in control, we tend to dismiss signals like pain. When I'm saying pain, back pain, you just call it a niggle, you kind of ignore it, a bit of a low-grade headache at the back of your head or at the top at one side. These are signals that you need to be stopping and reevaluating what you're doing. And these are the steps that I walk people through. You've got to have an awareness first, and then you've got to take responsibility for where am I right now and how did I get here? Not in a blame game sort of way, but in a, okay, right, I'm here because this is what I've been doing. This is what I've been telling myself. This is what I've been trying to achieve. And then getting really, really, really honest. Is this something that is in your control? The only things that we can actually control are how we feel, how we think, and the behavioral action steps that we take or do not take. Other than that, nothing is in our control. What's going on in the economy, what's going on in the world, what's going on with other people, how other people receive what we say, none of that's in our control, okay? What we've got to recognize is the more strict and rigid with ourselves we are, the less we're going to be open to being able to receive what we need to and allow in what is being freely given to us to help us to feel and function better. And that is why a lot of people use control as a barrier. It keeps them inside their bubble, but it also keeps them focusing on the external so that they don't have to go into the internal. Now, that was absolutely me, hands up, right? When I had my heart attack back in 2018, there was a lot going on. And I was trying to take more control of things that really just were not in my control. I was trying to manipulate outcomes because I wanted things to turn out a certain way so that I could then feel more in charge of stuff. Because over here, there was stuff I wasn't in control of. And that stuff that I wasn't in control of was the fact that I actually really hadn't grieved properly in any way, shape, or form for my dad, who took his life from suicide in 2015. And I certainly had not at that stage even comprehended how I felt or just even knew what my emotions were around my mum's death at the very beginning of 2018. And I had my heart attack at the very beginning of March. Mum died in February. So I had a lot of stuff going on that unconsciously I wasn't turning into the internal stuff. And I was trying to manipulate, control external stuff. I was going into, I need to feel better and I need to be really restrictive on my diet now and make sure that I'm not causing any inflammation. And I was cutting out dairy and gluten and all these things. And it was making me to some degree feel tired, but I also knew it would be helping. So I was ignoring the tiredness. And there was issues with my publisher about the event that I was going to be doing at Olympia, and on and on and on it went. And there was just something. There was just stuff was breaking at home, and there was expenses going on that I hadn't planned for. It was literally like stacking. And I'm sure all of you listening and watching this know exactly what I'm talking about. It's literally like there's a big pile of magazines and you're just adding on another one and another one and another one and another one. And yet before you know it, you can't see over the top of this pile of magazines and you just feel like you're drowning. But on the outside, to everybody else, I've got this. And I want you to know this is not a discipline problem. This is not to do with a motivation problem. And the key thing is this is not a self-worth problem. This is about you recognizing that your behaviors will give you a clue as to what is really going on and what you need to look at. So if you do find yourself deciding that you need to take more control because you are feeling that things are out of control, that you're not getting through the stuff that you need to do and you've got too much stuff going on all over the place, I'm going to invite you to do the exact opposite of what your brain is telling you to do. And that is stop and pause and give yourself some space. Do that little exercise I suggested. Excuse me, get really honest with yourself about just what is going on. What are the things that are in your control? And what are the things that are absolutely not in your control? And the only things in your control are how you think, how you respond, how you feel, the actions that you take. You are not in control of other people. You are not in control of what is going on in the wider world. You are not in control of the economy. You are not in control, crucially, of other people's actions, thoughts, or feelings. And when we recognize that the more we can relax, we cannot punish ourselves and control ourselves into high performance. What we need to do is give ourselves space. We need to reconnect to ourselves and allow ourselves to take control of the stuff that we can control, let go of outcomes, and focus on staying present and doing the best that we can in and of that moment. Let go of the rest. Because when you do that, you actually will feel more in control. Now, you're not going to know that unless you give yourself permission to do it. Because talking about it and thinking about it is just not the same. And unless you actually experience this for yourself, you're not going to believe that it will work. So this is my invitation to you. Get curious. Give yourself permission to give it a try. And then let me know how you get on. And I'm going to leave you there with this, as I always do, folks. We only have one life as far as we know, and one body. So please take care of it, because it is taking care of you. Until next time, have a great day.